Okay, here we go. It's our first time back in... I guess we only missed 1 week, huh? But we were on vacation.
Welcome to This Is Reviewable, everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Or you can welcome us back. Yeah, so we watched Dune Part 2.
Mm-hmm. This was before we left, actually. We just didn't have time to record it.
Yeah.
Because... Why?
Because we watched it the night before we left.
And it finished at 11?
11, so we didn't get home until like close to midnight or...
Right.
11 to midnight, something like that. And then we were going to record that night, but neither of us had packed, and so we packed, and then it was midnight or something like that. And then we were going to wake up at 8, have a slow morning, go to the airport, and my anxiety woke me up at 6:30 or something to say that... And our flight, I'd gotten a notification that our flight was delayed, and I knew that if it was delayed, there was a big storm coming to Utah, and it got delayed to like 2 o'clock or something like that, or 3 o'clock, and I knew that if it got delayed that much, it was just going to keep getting delayed. So I changed our flight to early in the morning, and we hurried, and we got out of that. Long story long, or short story long, we did not record this before our vacation. But we saw it the night before we left, 2 weeks ago.
So we've had a whole 2 weeks to reflect, but we didn't really spend that much time reflecting on it, to be honest.
To be honest, I completely forgot that I'd even watched it.
Yeah. But let's just jump right into it, I guess. I mean, do we need to say what it's about?
Really briefly, maybe.
Okay.
Go for it.
Alright, fine. So Paul is, think of this as Game of Thrones in space, kind of. The story of Dune. Mixed with a lot of religious overtone and colonialism, empire overtone. Basically, Paul is from one of the noble houses. They go to this planet called Arrakis. I'm a little bit summarizing the first part, the first movie. They go to Arrakis, they get betrayed, his whole family dies, and then he ends up with his mom in the desert. And this planet is very hostile. It's extremely difficult to survive in the desert, but there are tribes of natives that live in the desert called Fremen, and they're just really good at fighting, and they're really good at saving water and moving through the sands and all that jazz. You've probably seen pictures of the big sandworms. There are gigantic sandworms on this planet, and that's part of what makes it so dangerous in the desert. If you make noise, the sandworms will find you, and they'll gobble you up for dinner. But these Fremen have adapted, and they're able to survive. And this is part 2, which is Paul learning the ways of the Fremen and then trying to get revenge, basically, by the end of the movie. Yeah?
It's good.
Okay, that's the summary.
I've read the book a couple of times. The
first book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the movie's about, is the first book.
Yeah, that's true.
What?
Good point. There are 6 books in the Dune storyline, I guess. These movies are only dealing with the first book so far. Part 1 and 2 encapsulate just the first book. I don't know if that's a necessary thing to say or not, but it's out there now. I can't take it back. Do you want to go ahead and talk?
Yeah,
one more thing.
You asked. So I read the book, and I read the book the first time. I almost finished the book before watching part 1.
Uh-huh.
And then I really liked the movie, so I was like, oh, let me read it again. And I actually really liked it the second time that I read it.
The book.
Yeah. And then I watched it again just to remember everything right before part 2. So I basically read this book 3 times. The first movie, I was really impressed at how well they followed the book. 99% they followed the book, which is really impressive. Part 2, they changed a lot of things from the book, which I can understand why they did it. A lot of the things. This is a very long story, and if they'd done everything exactly the same as the book, the movie would have been forever long. Or it would have felt really rushed, and I don't think that would have been good. But the one thing I could not get past was Chani, which is Paul's girlfriend.
Zendaya.
Who Zendaya plays.
Oh, don't worry. If you were one of the people that thought Zendaya was, like, the main character of the first movie, and then she was in it for, like, 10 minutes, and you got really upset about that, don't worry. She's in this one more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the acting is very well done. She did a good job, but her character in the movie is nothing like the character in the book. It's exactly opposite.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I have issue with that because of how much of a main character she was in part 2.
In the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they had lessened her influence in the movie and kept the character the same as they portrayed in the movie, I would have been okay with it, I think. I could have been more okay with it. Or if they'd kept her the same and less influence, like the same as the book, I mean, if they'd followed the book, I would have been happy with that. I just had issue with the way that they portrayed Chani in the movie.
Because in the book, she is one of the things about this movie is Paul's mom is, like, basically a space witch, and she comes from an order of space witches, and they're able to... They've got, like, some weird powers that, like, they can speak in this voice that can control people. They can communicate with each other telepathically. And then also, the Bene Gesserit. Can they not?
No.
Oh. Why am I...
Only Reverend Mothers can to each other.
Oh, okay.
But the regular...
Okay, anyway, they can speak in this voice that can control people. And also, when the women get pregnant, they can choose what the gender of the baby will be. And part of their whole order is they're trying to create, like, some kind of super child by crossing bloodlines.
Well, they're basically trying to create, like, the Messiah or whatever. Like...
Well, yeah, and like, but they want to be able to control this Messiah. And they sent missionaries to Arrakis a long time ago to, like, spread the prophecy of this child. But, like, it's very cynical because they know that they can produce this child. It really has nothing to do with faith at all. But they're creating a religion around this idea that it's just going to happen magically, even though they're kind of in control of it.
No, they definitely are.
Yeah. And so they teach this to a bunch of the people on Arrakis. And so the people, when they see Paul, they see signs of the Messiah. And so they're very, like, enamored with him. It's a very... They don't understand that the Bene Gesserits are controlling this whole religion behind the scenes. And Chani in the book is part of the religion.
She believes in Paul.
Yeah, that he's the Messiah. And then in the movie, she is a complete skeptic.
She doesn't believe in the religion, for one.
Yeah.
And she really doesn't like that Paul is leaning into this at some point.
Right, because he uses it to...
get power.
To raise an army, basically, so that he can fight the people that betrayed his family.
And, like, in the book, there's a part where Paul is, like, meditating or something, and he hears that Chani has killed someone. And he talks to Chani about this, and he's like, why did you do that? She's like, well, they wanted to challenge you. They wanted to fight you. And I knew that it wasn't worth your time, so I took care of it for you.
Yeah.
And that would never have happened in the movie, the way that they portrayed Chani.
Yeah, they changed it quite a bit. And, like, maybe neither of us have read Messiah, which is the third book, or the second book, Dune Messiah, or any of the others. So maybe Chani has a flip later that we don't know about, and they're...
That would be pretty unbelievable, in my opinion.
But maybe that's, like, the character that they're using for Dune Part 2, and they're just trying to expedite the process, but... Maybe. Having just read that first book, it does not... Her character is not preserved from the book.
This movie was good.
Yeah.
It was. I feel like I'm bashing on it a ton. It was just... they did such a good job in the first one that the whole second movie, I was like, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong,
Well,
this is wrong.
the thing I think that's frustrating is it's not that they just made a good movie the first time. They made a good movie while staying pretty much exactly true to the source material. And then this time they made a good movie but did not stay true to the source material in some key ways.
And like I said, like, they changed things that I understand why they changed it. You know, Paul's sister was supposed to be a part of this part of the book, or like she in this part of the movie, and they didn't add her. And I can understand why they didn't. That's a whole other concept.
It's extra.
It would have taken too much time and taken away from the other parts of the movie. I understand why they didn't do it. But it was just Johnny.
Or Fade Rotha, whatever his name is. Like he was much more formidable in the movie than he was in the book.
Yeah. In the book, he's kind of a slime.
Yeah, which I can understand why, because he's the main antagonist, I guess, of this film, and he needs to feel like an actual problem.
The thing that I did like that I just thought of, so Florence Pugh is in this, and she's the Emperor's daughter. And in the book, she narrates a lot of parts of, like, journals or insights and stuff. Like, she talks a lot in the book. You don't ever actually really see her until maybe the end. I mean,
of the
book.
Yeah.
You know. But I really liked the way that they did her character in the movie.
Because she narrates.
Yeah, she narrates, and and her parts are interesting.
Yeah.
And she does a really good job.
Yeah, everybody does a good job in this movie. It's still...
Like, it's very visually amazing.
It still looks great, yeah.
The acting is amazing. The script is really good, I thought.
Yeah.
There are funny parts.
Yeah.
Which is impressive because this is not a funny book.
No.
It's just... So.
Yeah, I can't really find a reason to knock it. It just... Like at least on a technical level from our limited...
But you don't love
technical knowledge. Yeah, I just don't love this story that much. I think it's very cynical. It's without hope, it feels like. I don't know.
I think a lot of the different concepts in the book are really interesting, though. Like the whole controlling from a voice. And in the book, they have this thing where someone will say something and there'll be like keywords in their sentence, and like the way that they inflect things is what you're supposed to read into what they're saying. So they could say, Duke Atreides, there's an emergency that we need you to come take care of. And the people who know to pay attention hear that, but then they'll hear certain things in that, and it'll actually mean to them, things are okay, there's a breach, but if everyone just stays where they are, you'll be safe. As like an example. That's not exactly what it was, but... And it's just interesting, that whole concept of layers to language, and...
Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting concepts in this book.
Yeah. I remember finishing the book and being like, yeah, I think that was pretty good, but I doubt I'm ever going to read it again, because it's just like... It just felt slow. It's not that long. It's really not.
Decently long.
Well, it's like, what, 20 hours to listen to? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But like it feels kind of long.
Yeah.
Kind of longer than it actually is, and maybe part of that is the fact that they're just in this sandy wasteland, and I'm just picturing it, and I'm like, damn, get me out of here. It kind of feels like I have this same feeling when I watch Napoleon Dynamite, because it's just like, I think it was filmed in Idaho, and it just looks like an absolute hellhole to live in, and it just saps my energy just watching it. Maybe that's how this makes me feel.
I really liked it the second time that I read it, because the first time I read it, there was too many names, I couldn't keep track. But after watching the movie, the second time I read it, I really liked it. And then this time, I think it might have just been too close together. Yeah. It was a lot. It's a long book. It's very beefy and in detail and stuff like that. It's very well written though.
Yeah. I've heard people, or one review that has kind of become viral-ish on the internet. And it basically says, I now understand how people felt when they watched Star Wars for the first time.
I don't agree.
Yeah, like, this is a matter of preference, like, very much a matter of preference, how you're going to feel walking out of this movie, but I don't think it's nearly that impactful as Star Wars was back in the 70s. I don't know. I think it's a very good sci-fi movie. It's very well made. I just don't like the story. So that's how I feel about it, and I'm probably not going to be watching it too many more times in my life.
I'd watch the second part or the first part again. Just so it's just such a, both of them are just so visually amazing. I don't know. Do you want to rate it?
Yeah, sure. Part 2, I'm gonna give it. I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8 wormy worms out of 10. Because I think it's like, yeah, I can't really like fault it on any kind of technical level. Not that I'm an expert on all the technicality involved in filmmaking, because I'm definitely not. But just from what I know, like, I can't fault it. I think it, like you said, it looks very visually stunning. The score is good. The writing is good. All the actors do a good job. It's just not really my story that I love.
Yeah. I think I'm going to rate this a 7.5.
Okay.
I don't want you to think, like, I hate this movie. I don't. I think if I watched it again, I might like it more.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to rate off of how I feel now. And I think I'm going to rate this a 7.5. Humble Lisan Al-Gaib out of 10.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Okay, I'm going first.
Uh-huh.
Well, I watched a show, the first season of a show. That's the way we're going to be doing this from now on, by the way, because it just takes way too long to finish an entire show most of the time. So we're just going to go season by season reviews, because I think that's fair. That's like a freaking 10-hour investment anyways. But that's my tirade over. The show that I watched is Gomorrah. It's an Italian...
Spelled with a G.
Yeah. It's an Italian drama about the Camorra, spelled with a C, which is the organized crime drug syndicate in Naples.
Italy.
Yeah. And this show is actually taken from a book about, I think it's called the same thing. Yeah, it is called the same thing, Gomorrah. And that book was adapted for a film, and Micah is rudely eating ice cream, or as the Camorra would call it, gelato.
It's not gelato, though. It's made differently.
Well, I mean, what would they call it? What are they going to call it?
How do you say ice?
It looks like a duck.
How do you say ice?
Walks like a duck.
How do you say ice?
Ghiaccio.
Gaucho crema.
Crema ghiaccio.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this is technically the second adaptation of the book source material, although it's not like a one-to-one adaptation. It says, like, at the beginning it says Trattata da do libro, the book, and it just means like it's influenced, it's taken from the book. It's not really the book. So think of this as like a sort of Breaking Bad, more like Peaky Blinders, I would say, where you're following the villains, you're following the crime people. And I'm very conflicted about this show.
Why?
So on the one hand, it's helping me get my Italian back to a good place, and I'm learning some cool ways of saying regular Italian words in the Napolitan style, and that's nice. Also, I think it's extremely well acted. The production value is very high. It's the show that I was, I guess, comparing it to the most besides Peaky Blinders was Narcos, which is the one about the Colombian drug cartel, for those of you that don't know, and it's a Netflix series. The production quality is roughly the same.
As Narcos.
As Narcos. It's very different. Like, you can tell that the budget. I'm sure that the budget was smaller for Gomorrah than they had for Narcos, and Narcos is a lot more vibrant. It's a lot more like loud, um, which makes sense. Like, you've got that like sort of South American flair, South American, Colombian vibrancy, I guess. This is there's a lot of grays, there's a lot of blues, and the violence when it happens is very fast and not glamorous. So it feels like real, feels very realistic the way that some of the violence happens. So I think the production quality is really high, the acting's really good, the writing is good. It's pretty easy to follow, despite there being a lot of characters, and they introduce you to the world gently enough where you can understand and follow what's going on. Um, on the other hand, I hate everyone in this show. They're all dicks. Every single one of them. Everyone is a piece of shit on this show. Every single character.
Well,
and like,
I want to play devil's advocate and say, well, obviously, because it's the mafia.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you look at The Godfather. You don't hate everybody in that.
There's a way to do it where you can root for the characters.
Yeah, and you look at Peaky Blinders and you love Tommy.
Yes, which is amazing because he's not a good person.
No, he's not.
But he's got enough redeeming qualities that you're like, I can kind of get behind this guy.
But I don't know how I can play devil's advocate to this, because that's just the writer's choice.
So in my opinion, my feelings about Breaking Bad. Like, I think it's an incredibly well constructed show, but it's like, I hate Walter and I hate Skyler. Like, there's very few main characters that are redeemable, and they spend so much time on Walter that like it's just hard for me to watch that show. Imagine Walter, even less redeeming qualities, and he does things that are 10 times worse than anything he does in Breaking Bad. That's every main character in this show.
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do with that? Like, and they'll introduce a character that I like in an episode, and I'm like, I really like this guy. I'm rooting for this guy. And then they get sucked into the mafia world somehow, and then one of the main characters kills them in an absolutely brutal, unforgivable way.
Wow.
And
so this is super violent.
A couple of episodes later, it's violent, but it's not like super graphic. It's just more like the fact of what they're doing is just disgusting and horrible. I'll give you an example. So there's this one character that he works in a shop. He fixes scooters and motorcycles because that's what people in Napoli drive around. And the main character's name is Ciro, and he's a bald-headed, baldy man. And he's sort of got like ambitions to be more than what he is in the organization. He's not in charge of the family. He's kind of just a soldier. Anyway, Ciro, this kid that works at the shop, Ciro starts to groom him into being part of the mob. He's giving him responsibility, and like, this kid from the outside looking in sees Ciro, and he's wearing these nice clothes, and he's got this cool motorcycle.
Ciro is?
Yeah. And, he knows about the Gomorrah, he knows who Ciro is, and he's like, there's this mystique around the Gomorrah before he's actually in it. And Ciro gets him to kill somebody, and that person ends up being a somebody from another crime family.
Oh, damn.
And the guy didn't know. Ciro never told him. And Ciro was basically like promising him more money, like, once he does this thing, and he pays him like up front. He gives him a big payment before he goes and does this kill. And this kid goes out and gets an engagement ring for his girlfriend. And after he does the kill, he goes to his girlfriend's house, and he's obviously shaken up because he's never killed anybody before, and proposes to his girlfriend. They're very happy, and then they go and celebrate. Ciro had told this kid to go right home after he finished the hit, and then call him, and then they were going to go out for a beer together, basically. And this kid sees on the TV there's already news about the murder and who this guy was that he killed, and he calls Chiro and he's like, "Why didn't you tell me he was important?" And Chiro's like, "I didn't want you to worry about it. Where are you right now?" And he's like, "I'm outside the bar with my girlfriend." And he's like, "Okay, just go right home and go home right now. We'll take care of all this." And he leaves his girlfriend, calls his friend to come and pick up his girlfriend. He gets to the house. Chiro had sent people to the house to kill him when he got back, to for no loose ends. So this kid doesn't go home and he escapes. Chiro's looking for him. Chiro finds his girlfriend before the kid's friend finds the girlfriend, and Chiro tortures her and kills her and puts her in a car and sets the car on fire.
Oh my gosh.
And this is the character that we follow through the story. And like, I feel very conflicted about it because on one hand I think that they're showing that this mafia, everything they touch is just withers and dies and horrible things happen, and it's not a good thing. But also, like, the fact that we follow Chiro so closely and we're following his like ambitions to like move up in the world makes me feel like we're kind of supposed to root for him, and I cannot root for that guy. He's horrible. Like, Walter White never did anything like what I just described in Breaking Bad. Kinda. He's done some bad, but like torturing a 15-year-old girl and then burning her.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
It's awful. It's terrible. Yeah, Walter let Jesse's girlfriend die, but like,
and then let Jesse get kidnapped,
she was
right?
much older. Well, he saved Jesse in the end. Like, Chiro has no moral compass. He's only doing what will progress him further into this drug mafia world. And every character is like this. He's probably the worst example because we get to follow him and see all the innocent people he kills and all the terrible things that he does with no remorse. So, yeah, anyway, like, it feels like we're supposed to be on his side, and I'm just not. Like, so, I was invested, though, I will say that, and I'm going to keep watching it because I want to see what happens. But it's tough. It's tough to root for any of these characters. I'll give it a 7.5 little Italian scooters out of 10. First season.
All right. I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This was a reread for me. I read it in high school. Did you read this in high school?
Yeah.
I don't think I really appreciated it, and then I think when we were early married, I read it. I fell in love with this book, and so I read it because I was like, "Oh, this is such a good book." Like, I think I had just finished Dune, and it was kind of a lot to get through this time. I was like, I just need something that's fast that I can just get through. And it was harder for me to get through this. So just really quickly, if you don't know this, it's oh man, what's his name?
Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah, but the narrator of the book.
Is his name Nick?
Nick.
From Nick from Jimmy Neutron? The dreamy kid with the long hair. He's kind of a skater boy.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's Nick Carraway, and he lives in like this little, it's not a shack, it's like a very small house on Long Island, and he lives next to this absolute mansion of a house. And Jay Gatsby lives there. Jay Gatsby every single weekend throws these massive parties, and he's trying to attract one person to all of these parties. Yeah. And so Nick Carraway kind of gets swept up into all of these people's lives, and just rich people,
the glamour
problems, and the glamour of it, and the parties,
and the Kardashians are there, and his arms were cut off.
Her eyes were cut. walked out. And I think, as an adult, really, this is only the second time I think I've read this, and I interpreted this book completely different than I did last time.
You didn't read this in high school?
I did.
Okay.
But, as an adult.
Yeah.
It doesn't really count in high school. I wasn't paying attention or anything. I didn't appreciate it.
Oh, I was paying attention in high school, and I felt a certain way about it.
You don't like this book?
Well, I hated it in high school, but...
So I think, when I talk about this, I'm going to say, as I'm only counting as reading this as an adult. So the first time that I read this, I think I was so wrapped up in the story and how good the writing is, and this is a classic, and realizing not all classics are boring.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I read this. And then this time, I really was affected by the story, and none of these characters are good people.
Not even Jay?
No. He's not.
I can't remember ever disliking him, though.
He's not a great person. He's a liar.
Is he?
Yeah. His name isn't even Jay Gatsby. His real name is James Gatz.
Uh-huh.
And he just makes up this whole story about himself, and pretty much all of it is a lie.
Well, because he doesn't want her to know he's a bootlegger, right?
Yeah, but even his past. I mean, he says that he comes from money and all of this. He doesn't. He ran away from home when he was little, and he was homeless, and he went and caught clams and oysters and all of that and sold that, and then he went to the war and became a bootlegger and all of that when he came back, and changed his name.
The reason he doesn't tell Daisy that is because
he doesn't tell anybody that.
Yeah, but it's because Daisy can't be with him because he's a lower class. It's like bourgeoisie versus old money.
Yeah.
So I don't really blame him for that. It's the society, because I think F. Scott Fitzgerald is criticizing society and the American dream and the impossible situations that it puts people into. And Gatsby's just trying to win the girl that he loves and doesn't really know another way to do it.
Yeah.
As I never had a problem with Gatsby for that reason, at least.
I did this time, reading it. Because I don't think I ever really realized that he lied about everything. And the only reason Nick finds out is because the event that happens at the end of the book, he's so shaken up about it that he just tells Nick everything. And it's just, the event happens at the end of the book, and Daisy and her husband just leave.
Yep.
Because it's not their problem anymore. Even though it's 100% both of their faults.
I hated Daisy.
It's nobody else's fault except for Daisy and her husband.
Yep, I hated Daisy and her husband, and I hated the friend too.
Yeah, Jordan.
By the end of that book, Nick seemed like he was the only one that had his head on straight for most of the...
And I think it's just the money aspect of it, in my opinion,
Yeah.
It just clouds people's minds, and they just... I don't know. So, this is a great book. I know that I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but it's so well written, and the story is so captivating, and the writing
moves really quick.
It does. It's only a 4.5 hour book, or something like that. I just think this is one of those books that every time you read it, you're probably gonna focus on something different and get something else out of it. Because, like I said, the first time I read this as an adult, I loved it. I fell in love with this book. And I thought that I was going to have the same feeling reading it this time. And maybe, my expectations were too high, and that's on me, but it's a very, very good book, and I think everyone should read it.
Rating?
I think I'm going to write...
Spoiler.
What?
So we can spoiler talk.
I'm going to rate this a 9 secret afternoon teas out of 10.
You're going to say old sport.
No, that would have been good than that. So are you going to talk about spoilers with us?
Yeah. Do you think there's a subculture of the internet that thinks that Daisy is the hero of this story?
You
You
have like
do you think that
you
exists?
like hyperfixate on some of these things.
What? What do you mean? I'm just curious.
Are you talking about Summer?
Well, I'm not. I'm not saying Summer is the same thing as Daisy. I'm just wondering if there's like. I wonder if anyone reads this and they're like, I don't see what Daisy did wrong.
So this is a spoiler. Daisy and her husband basically get two people killed. Daisy kills one person, and then
Oh, she runs over
yes,
the wife. That's her.
that's her. And then the husband, not Daisy's husband, the what's his name?
Oh,
Tom.
the
So
gas
Daisy
station
and
man.
Tom
The gas
are
station
married.
man.
Tom is stepping out on Daisy with this woman who her husband owns the gas station. Daisy runs over the mistress.
Yep.
And
because she's hysterical
yeah.
and just driving and not paying attention because she can't handle her feelings or something.
Yeah. And then, long story short, Tom tells the husband of the shop. So Tom was having an affair with this guy's wife.
Yeah.
He tells the shop owner that it was Gatsby that ran over his wife.
What an absolute freaking snake. That couple.
I don't think he knew at the time. Actually, he probably did know at the time that Daisy was the one.
Driving because she's the one that got in the driver's seat when they left.
I don't know.
The city or whatever.
Yeah. And so Daisy actually killed someone, ran them over. But Tom killed Gatsby.
Yeah.
Because he was upset that Daisy was having an affair.
With Gatsby.
Yeah.
Yep. Hypocritical because he's having an affair.
Actively.
Yep.
And has their whole marriage. I mean, on their honeymoon, he was having an affair. It's just...
So I think the reason that ending upset me so much is because I liked Gatsby. If I didn't care about Gatsby, I don't feel like I would have really been so upset at the ending.
And I think what's so sad is Gatsby dies, and then nobody comes to his funeral. Because they can't.
I forgot.
Because they're all...
bootleggers.
Yeah. This book is great.
It's not a happy book.
No.
I hate it. I hate Daisy. I hate Tom. I hate
Jordan.
Because they all like Nick sees them all later and they're all just pretending like nothing's wrong. Nothing happened. And Nick's like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
Because Nick goes to the funeral, doesn't he?
He puts on the whole thing. He organizes the whole funeral.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at some point later, at the very end of the book, Nick runs into Tom in the city. And he tries to avoid Tom, but Tom sees him and is like, "Nick, how are you? Like, give me a hug." And like Nick doesn't want to. And then Nick tries to like call him out on his bullshit, basically. Like, you did all of this. And Tom won't accept it for one, but for two, can't see it. He doesn't care. And so at the end of their conversation, Tom's sticking out his hand, and Nick is like, "I shook his hand because to refuse is to cause a toddler to have a temper tantrum."
Yeah.
Because that's what he is. He's a little boy that didn't grow up and never learned consequences, and it's sad. But if you haven't read this, please read it. It's so short.
So what do you think the message is? What do you think the big message is for you?
That money corrupts people.
Okay.
And especially kids that grow up with money. Not all the time. Oftentimes they don't learn consequences for their actions because mommy and daddy can just pay for them to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I will say, not all the time. But that's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
And like I guess like what you said, you have to have a certain social standing for Gatsby, and he was always aspiring to do that.
Yeah, he's always chasing that green light across the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like also it's be careful what you wish for because it'll lead you down a path that you might not want to walk eventually.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened to him.
Well, yeah, and you don't always get to choose the consequences of your actions and all of that. All right. Well, thanks guys for listening. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok at This Is Reviewable. Have a great week. Bye.